Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this class. This is the first class that I'll be teaching. This is the online classes that I will be teaching you. And just a little introduction of myself. I'm Dr. Anita Khoso, and I teach at the University of Greater Manchester. I'm a lecturer there sorry. Yeah, I'm a lecturer there for physician associates, and I teach public health as well. So a little bit of introduction from yourself also, but yeah, because there's no one at the moment. So whenever we meet, that introduction will be very much beneficial. So we'll start with the first session. It is the introduction of biology. So I'll start sharing my screen. By the way, this whole presentation, this whole hour of this presentation has been recorded, so you will be receiving the recordings very shortly. So I'm sharing my screen. I hope it's visible to you. So this is the introduction of biology, which is which comes under the um, uh, level the unit level 2. Its credit value is it's got of the credit unit is level 2. And we'll talk a little bit about what is expected, the learning outcomes that we expect from the students from this unit. So yeah, so the learning outcomes include that you should be able to recognize by the end of this session the basic characteristics of all living organisms. There, where you identify and give definitions of life processes common to living organisms. You understand the organization of body, of the body, sorry. This is the second learning outcome, where you describe the relationship between cells, tissues, organs, and systems. And this is done through examples from the human organism. And then you go on to appreciate the biochemical basis of life. So here, this learning outcome is divided into 3 assessment criteria. So here you outline the structure of simple carbohydrates, protein, lipids, and nucleic acids and nucleic acid molecules. And where you'll be given examples of the functions of carbohydrates, proteins, lipids, and nucleic acids in living organisms. The fourth and the last learning outcome for this unit is to understand the mode of action of enzymes, where you describe how enzymes work, investigate the effect of temperature or pH on the functioning of enzymes. So this is a little bit about the introduction to this unit. I'll stop sharing here. I'll stop share here. And now the second thing that I will share with you is today's learning outcome. Okay, so this is about biology. It's an introduction into biology. Let's start sharing my screen. I hope it's visible to you. So as I said, biology is all about life. Bio is life, and anything that ends with OGY is the study. So biology is the study of life. So this is access to biology. And here you will recognize the basic characteristics of all living organisms. So we start. If there are any questions at the end of this session, please feel free to email at ukversity.co, at learnerwork at ukversity.co.uk. That's learnerwork. I'll send it in the text as well. Learnerwork at ukversity.co.uk. So that's the place where you want to send your questions, and we will answer those questions accordingly. So yeah, so we'll now go ahead and understand the basic characteristics, or recognize the basic characteristics of all living organisms. So as I said earlier, here what our objective is to meet the learning outcome. You would be able to understand what makes something living, and they're able to identify, and you are able to identify those features very clearly. So what is a living object and what is a non-living object? Okay. So there's 7 characteristics of living organisms. Okay. And you can remember this through this acronym or this short uh, term, which is known as Mrs. Gren, MRSGREN. So there are several, these 7 characteristics. Obviously, it's hard to remember all of them, but when you remember these acronyms, Mrs. Gren, it makes it easier. So the first one is movement. Yes, living organisms move. If you have a bottle of water, it's not a living organism. You place it somewhere, it cannot move. And that shows that it is not a living organism. So every living organism has the ability to move um, in any way. So animals move from place to place. Plants move slowly, turning towards light. We know they move with their growth. They move with there's wind that moves them. That's passive movement, but they actively move as well when they are growing or when they have plants. That is also called they have fruits, for instance, um, or they have flowers that open up and close, so they're moving themselves as well. So their movement obviously cannot be visible like that of animals, but they do have movement. So this is showing that they are uh, living organisms. And then the second is respiration. Respiration means breathing. So living organisms release energy from food through respiration. Okay, so when we move, when we breathe, the whole process is known as respiration, and every living organism has this ability to respire, to breathe. And what is the basic function through breathing? Through it's the release of energy from food. So this can be aerobic with oxygen. Okay, so we have oxygen, we breathe. We breathe in oxygen and we give out carbon dioxide, another gas, into the environment. Uh, this When it happens with the association of oxygen, it is known as aerobic respiration. Aerobic, just remember, with aerobics, with exercise, you have oxygen coming in and going out as carbon dioxide. Anaerobic is whenever you have the word an, it shows none or it shows not. Okay, so anaerobic, not oxygen or without oxygen. We have certain organisms that breathe without oxygen. We will give those details later on. Respiration happens inside cells. So there are specific cells that are involved in the entry and exit of gases, and that gas exchange happens in certain cells. The third so this is MRS. Now the third is sensitivity, response to a stimulus. What is a stimulus? Pain is a stimulus, heat is a stimulus, cold is a stimulus. Um, so living things detect and respond to the changes in environment. Humans react to heat, light, and sound. So if there's sound that is very high, you will wake up, obviously. You'll respond to it. So you are sensitive. You have sensitivity. Okay. So um, and we talk about the 7 senses. Okay. So it's something like that. Um, and then plants grow towards light or respond to gravity. So gravity pulls them. So that is why they're sensitive towards gravity, and they're sensitive towards light exposure. So you see sunflower, it always responds towards light. And most of the flowers that you see, they bloom or they open up when there's sunlight on them. So that's MRS done. So movement, we have respiration, and we have sensitivity. The fourth is growth. Obviously, growth is increase in the number and the size of the cells. Number or size of cells. Okay, so either the number increases or the size increases or both increase. So children grow into adults, and plants grow from seed to mature plants. Okay, so you can see the massive trees that we see, they start from a small seed. So living things should have the capability of growing. Now, some things don't grow. Like, let's say I reach to a certain age where I stop growing. Obviously, I'm not going to. We grow, our bones grow, but there is a time when our growth ends. We don't grow further, but that growth is not related to your height only. Okay, so your hair grows, your nails grow, other growth aspects also happen. It's not just the height that grows. Okay, so reproduction is reproducing, like producing again, all over again. So living organisms can produce offsprings. Okay, so they have the ability to reproduce themselves. Animals reproduce sexually or asexually. So these are two ways where they can reproduce, either through the sexual way or through asexual ways. And we'll give the details later on. Uh, and animals, we are also involved in, we are also included in animals. And bacteria produced by binary fission is a way where they break up into two. Binary is two, so they have a breaking up process where they reproduce. Okay, so one bacteria leads to an offspring of theirs. Um, and then uh, excretion. Excretion is the release of waste material. Okay, so waste products that we eat our food, whatever we do not eat, whatever is not of benefit to us, that is known as waste, a waste product. It's produced by several chemical reactions. So human excrete carbon dioxide. So as I said, we take in oxygen, we give out carbon dioxide. Urea in urine, sweat, that is also excretion. We give out unwanted food material in our feces as well. And plants release oxygen. So plants are different from us. They breathe in and they breathe out as well, just like us. But the difference is that we breathe in oxygen and we give out carbon dioxide. Whereas plants, they breathe in carbon dioxide and they give out oxygen as a byproduct. And photosynthesis is the process of production um, of food or fruit, because and photo means light. So whenever there's light, so that's why some plants don't survive without light. So you need light, photo, and that is sunlight, obviously, to synthesize food. And during that process, they release oxygen. So that is why plants are so good for us, because they clean the air for us. They give out oxygen, which is very clean. And then the seventh and the last one is nutrition. So living organisms obtain or produce food. So animals eat the other organisms, and plants make their own food by photosynthesis. Okay, so that is Mrs. Gren. So there's some additional characteristics also beyond Mrs. Gren that living organisms have. They're made up of cells. So cell is the basic unit of life on which the whole organism survives. The unicellular, uni is one and multi is many, more than one. So the unicellular organisms that have one cell, and multicellular organisms that have multiple cells. And they maintain homeostasis. What is homeostasis? Homeo means stasis means there's regulation, there's stress, there's a balance. So humans or living organisms, they regulate the internal conditions like temperature, like pH, like water balance, and that is to survive. Okay, so when the temperature is very hot outside, our um, our temperature within our body goes down. Okay, and that happens when we perspirate or we give out sweat, okay, as excretion. That is a way to release the heat within our body. whenever it is hot. And whenever it is cold, that doesn't happen. So you don't sweat in the cold environment, cold temperature. And then there's pH and water balance, which our kidneys and our lungs, they're involved in. And that is basically to survive. And they contain genetic material, which is deoxyribonucleic acid. This is a genetic material that controls the function, the growth, and reproduction of human or of any organism, any living organism. That is why when a person dies, you have the DNA testing, which shows what their identity is also recognized through the DNA. How to recognize in something is living? To decide whether something is living, check, sorry, if it shows most of all of these characteristics which we've just mentioned. For instance, a rock does not grow, it does not breathe, it does not reproduce, it is a non-living organism. A plant grows, respires, responds to light, reproduces, so it is known as a living organism. Viruses are debated till now because they do not carry out all life processes independently. They need some other organism to survive on. So that is why we cannot say for sure that they are living or non-living organisms. Now we go on to identify and define the life processes that are common to living organisms. So living organisms, they share a set of essential processes that allow them to survive, grow, and reproduce. These processes are often remembered using the same acronym, Mrs. Gren. So movement, we'll talk a little bit more in detail. We've talked a bit about a movement before. So the ability of an organism to change position or move parts of the body. All living organisms show movement in one or the other way. Animals move from place to place, while plants show movement. They show growth responses. They bend towards light. We've talked about this earlier. Respiration is again breathing. Okay, so this is a chemical process by which cells release energy from food. So whatever energy that we get from food, that is released through respiration, through breathing. Respiration occurs in all living cells. Okay, so as I said, we are made up of cells. The organism is made up of cells. So all the cells are involved and they are involved in respiration, in the process of respiration. There may be aerobic with oxygen or without oxygen, which is anaerobic. And the energy that is released is used for growth, for repair, for reproduction, for other life activities. Then sensitivity, that is response to stimuli. So we talked about heat, there's temperature, there's light. If you if you taste something, that's also sensitivity. So if you taste something sour, you'll have a response to it. And if you taste something sweet, you'll have another response to it. If sometimes you lose your sensitivity, like for instance, the touch, some people lose because of burns, they lose their sensitivity of to touch. And if um, there's a hot stimulus given to them, they actually don't feel. This is because the nerve endings, we all have nerve endings in our bodies that then show that respond to those stimuli. They give the sensitivity. People who are diabetic, for instance, who suffer from the metabolic disease called diabetes mellitus, they lose their sensitivity because their nerves are impacted when they are diabetics. So what happens? Their nerves are not functional anymore, and if you they hurt themselves very easily. So if they actually bleed to death sometimes, they won't even feel the pain because they've lost that sensitivity um, to pain. So because their nerve endings do not work anymore, they're not functional like in normal human beings. Without We all are normal human beings. Sorry for those who do not have diabetes. Living organisms respond to stimuli such as light, temperature, sound, chemicals, or touch. For instance, humans pull their hands away from heat and plants grow towards sunlight. Then there is growth, and it's a permanent increase in size, its mass, or cell number. And growth occurs when cells divide and they enlarge. Okay, so as I said, it's either the growth in the number or the size of the cell. In multicellular organisms, growth leads to development and increased complexity. Okay, so we are not unicellular, we have multiple cells, but they're unicellular organisms which are less complex than us. Multicellular, excuse me, organisms are more complex. There is growth that leads to development and increasing. So as many cells as you have, your body becomes more complex. Reproduction. So the process by which living organisms produce new individuals of the same species. If there's a human being, they will give birth to a human being. Okay, a dog will give birth to a dog. That is what the same species means. So reproduction can be sexual, involving two partners, where there's a male and a female, ideally, or asexual, where there's just one partner, one parent. Okay, so that happens as well. This process ensures that the survival of species happens. Okay, so if reproduction ends, there will be no survival of that particular species. Excretion. Urea, uh, and excess salts that must be removed to prevent damage to cells. So these are all waste products. We need to remove them from our bodies. So what happens that our bodies work. Yeah. So waste products need to be removed. So these include carbon dioxide, urea, excess salts. Excess salts are released for instance, in our sweat, urea through urine, carbon dioxide through breathing, and this is to prevent damage to the cells because they're waste products. They have to be released from the cells. The last is GREN. So N, the nutrition, the process by which organisms obtain or produce food for energy and growth. So animals obtain nutrients by eating other organisms. Okay, so we eat plants, and plants produce or we eat meat as well of other organisms, and plants produce their own food using the process of photosynthesis, which I've explained in detail. So this is a summary table of life processes of living organisms. So this shows that these are all the life processes, and this is their definition, and the examples are there as well. So please go through these references. They are very, very useful for you. Um, uh, there's some references that have been shared with you on Moodle as well, which are very essential for you to go through if you want to completely understand the topic, which is the introduction to biology. We'll go bit by bit, and it tends to get harder and more complex with the passage of time. So do have a look at this book. I would suggest you read it very thoroughly. It's McGraw-Hill. And this is the textbook for biology. And there's Pearson Education as well, by Harlow. So these are very essential. These are essential references as well. So refer to the ebooks and the journals on Moodle for this unit. If there are any queries, again, as I said, please email at learnerwork@ukversity.co.uk. You will have your assignment at the end of all the units when they're discussed completely. Assignment submission is after 2 weeks of the completion of the units and its delivery. Okay, so that's about it. As I said, if you have any questions, please feel free to email at learnerwork.ukversity.co.uk. And that's it from my side. I hope I was able to give you an understanding of what living organisms are and what separates them or what distinguishes living organisms from non-living organisms. Um, Mrs. Gren is one way to remember them, but there were certain other characteristics also which we went through. So please have a look at this video, and the next time when we join, I would appreciate if we could talk about it in further detail, and you could give me uh, a view of the understanding that you've had following this discussion. Okay, thank you so much. Take care. See you soon. Bye.